Sometimes you just have to know when to shut the fuck up. And this is one of those times. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special episode of Bothering the Band with the one and only voice of our generation, Mr. Matt Pinfield.
Hey,
Hey, there we go.
how you doing?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
Brian, Abby, how you doing? Great to see you today. Wearing my
Indeed.
reading glasses because I always need them. It's unbelievable.
Oh,
Um,
man.
which is all right, at this point, it really helps, especially anytime that I have to type or read anything. I have, I don't think I do really well with context, but and I don't really like putting contacts in my eyes or anything like that. And I literally a couple of years ago, like right before the pandemic, I had my retina wall rip or pop on one of my eyes, and they had to do like emergency surgery. I waited like weeks, and I finally said to a friend of mine in Seattle, I said, "Hey, now all of a sudden I'm seeing this little blind spot in the corner of my eye." She goes, "You need to go and get that checked out." And I went to the eye doctor here in Los Angeles, and they're like, "You need to get that operation in the next 24 hours." It was not crazy, but anyway. But otherwise, my eyes are good. I can't really complain. I mean, it could be a lot worse. But how you guys doing today?
Holy hell. Doing well. I too would, even if I lose my sight, I wouldn't be able to do contacts. I would have to do glasses. I don't like eyeball stuff.
I don't like eyeball stuff either, and just the fact that I got an operation where they had to go in there and drain the fluid out. They were worried that the leaking fluid from like the retinal wall would eventually hit the retina and it could cause blindness. So I was like, "Oh yeah, just do it." And the worst part was then you had to, I've been with my girlfriend now a year, but I mean, I was at that point I was single, and I was I had to come home and lay like flat. They're like, "Hey, do you have a massage table?" I'm like, "No, not at my disposal." And so like literally I'm laying, you know, you down. The only time you can get up is to use the bathroom or to eat, for a few days. And then eventually you can only lay one way, and there was all this stuff. And I had to keep going back to the eye specialist until they told me it was cool to lay comfortably on my side again. And it was a little crazy. But I was laughing about, when it first happened. I was like, "What happened to my eye?" It was the weirdest thing in the world. It was like I felt a pop like a thing, and then I saw these wavy lines. And I go, "It looks like a psychedelic 60s TV movie of these wavy lines that look like some weird thing." I was like, "What's going on with my eye?"
Well,
And
thank you. You've given me new
yeah,
anxiety.
I'm sorry to do that to you,
didn't,
Ryan.
didn't know I needed eyeball anxiety, but now I do. Apparently, it can just
Yeah,
pop and
yeah,
then need surgery.
it's a very odd thing about it. I know it's crazy. I said, "Well, how often does this happen?" They go, "Well, it's about 1% of the population." And I went, "That makes sense." I go, "Of course, it's probably, if it could happen, it could happen to me." I mean, I always joke that at one time I went to, when I was in rehab, accidentally, this one rehab, they poisoned me with potassium. They gave me way too much potassium. I ended up having to be rushed to the emergency room. Then I've got wires everywhere. I've got a hose in my nose. I've got like a couple other things in places that maybe I wouldn't really want to mention, but you can just imagine: catheter, another wire. And I'm like, all I wanted to do is get here and get sober. You end up in an emergency room and you're like, what is up with this?
Oh my God. How much potassium is too much potassium?
It was like 4 pills. And I think, there's only a certain amount that you're supposed to take, because then it becomes absolutely poisonous. And you can die from it, which is the really crazy thing. But so I was joking, saying, I've been clean and sober ever since then, because I was like, there's no way I want to go through that again and go to a rehab that might accidentally poison me, since I survived every other thing, like getting hit by a car, which I was hit by a car, and I was actually sober that evening, but I was coming across the street in Los Angeles, and a woman ran a red light, and I jumped up when I saw it out of the corner of my eye. Luckily, I saw her. I would have been under the car. and my leg was snapped in half, and I went through the windshield with my head. Like I went up into the car with my head and literally tore my head open. And if you hit the brakes, I guess that would have had to be a shock. See your head coming through someone's. Imagine you're in your car, you're texting, and all of a sudden, or you're on the phone, and all of a sudden, someone's head, like body, is flying through your windshield. That was me. And then, and my girlfriend said, "Yeah, Matt Pinfield's flying through my windshield," and she was, she was like, "Hey!" Oh, but anyway, it was a split second. I swear, I had no idea that it tore my head open, and then I went flying out over the hood of the car, conscious for the entire thing. It was like this crazy adrenaline shock that I was in, and I remember smelling the heat of the engine and feeling that. It was weird, and then landing about 15 feet across the street on the side of the road. Luckily for me, and I didn't get run over by another car. And then I was a long road to recovery. They, I now have a titanium rod in my one leg, but I hike all the time. I mean, I totally used to my leg again. It just took me about 8 months. First on a walker, then on a cane, and first thing I did when I got out of the hospitals, the 2 hospitals I was in, was one go to do a radio show, and the other go to see the Chris Cornell tribute concert at the Forum. And they were wheeling me around in a wheelchair, and then going to see the Killers play for another show. And they were like, "Dude, let's see that picture," because there was a very gruesome picture of my head being when they brought me into the hospital that somebody had taken, and I looked dead. Like I literally looked like you would look at the photo and say, "Well, he's no way he's alive." And that picture, when they put it on TMZ, they had to blur it out because it was considered so gruesome. But hey, I'm still here. And all's well that ends well, I guess. I'm certainly very grateful to be alive, and but I'm psyched though. But it's exciting to be on here with you guys on Bothering the Band.
Oh my goodness, that is the most intense start to any episode we've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, the first the retina wall, going through someone's windshield with your head and having it completely torn open, and having your leg snapped in half. The interesting thing was with TMZ breaking that story, they like me for some reason. You know how they're known for trashing people all the time on that show? They were like, "He's so brave. He's got such a positive attitude," which I did because I was alive. The thing that was really interesting to me was what I found is that if something like that happens to you, something that would cause you amazing amount of trauma, they'll send a psychiatrist or a psychologist into the hospital every day to ask you if you're suicidal or how you're feeling after something like that. And when they would come in every day, I'd go, "No, I'm actually really grateful to be alive." And that was a crazy thing, I think, but look, when I went flying through the air, they never found my shoes. You know what I mean? They did find my phone. So I was, you know what I mean? Which is cool. So I was able to call someone and tell them, "Hey, I don't know if I'm going to live, but I got hit by a car." And it was funny because one of my other friends who works, in music, somebody asked me, is he going to make it? And they go, "Well, he called and asked me for a phone charger in the hospital, so he must be okay." But it was it was like one of those things. But people in the neighborhood, they literally thought here in Hollywood that it was a guy with a red beard and red hair. And of course, I have no hair, but that was because from a distance, it looked like I had red hair and blood, and my beard was covered in blood. And when they brought me into the ambulance, they took about 9 minutes to get there. They basically said they cut off all my bloody clothes, and I had a Bob Dylan in the band basement tape shirt on that was really cool because Robbie Robertson's son, Sebastian, heard this story and brought me a new Bob Dylan in the band T-shirt, as a gift, because that one was covered in blood and all cut off. But they literally said to me, "Can you feel your toes?" And I said, "Yes, I can." And they said, "You're a miracle. We haven't seen much people survive a hit like that hasn't been paralyzed after this kind of situation." So I just super grateful, and I love that you talk about so many different things on this show. I'm such a big music fan, and I'm looking at what you have on the wall back there. I can see everything from Transformer to some Flaming Lips, if I'm not mistaken, to Miles Davis to MC5, Dylan, Hank Williams. I'm kind of reading that back.
You see what that one is?
Yeah. It looks like Pink Floyd Animals. Is it?
It is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So, yeah, you know me. I'm a I'm just, I'm such a music fan always, and it's been really interesting because I'm going through all my records that are in storage units back east, and and one of the reasons that I really wanted to, people were like, well, we'll buy them out, we'll buy your collection out, right? And I'm going through it because because I was a college radio DJ and a club DJ, alternative club DJ for many years, and worked at radio stations, managed radio stations, and was, when I was at MTV, I was manager of music programming. There were a lot of things that you get, promos, CDs, vinyl, and I really started to feel that it was time for me to go through my stuff, and I just didn't have the time, because I live on the West Coast now. On the East Coast, I have the storage units. I still do. We're still going through them, believe it or not. But I felt like the music sitting in boxes in there was just the most. For me, I felt it was criminal. That I'd rather take that stuff, give it to friends, or sell it, to the Princeton Record Exchange or a record store somewhere, so someone else could enjoy it. Like music is meant to be enjoyed. And for me not to be hoarded, even though I have an insane record collection here, but I just love music so much that so I've been going through that slowly, and I've been but what's cool is you find these old things, like pictures. Like I found a picture of, of the Radiohead guys in front of the nightclub that I DJ'd in, like they're standing outside of it, back around the time of Pablo Honey. They drove down because someone told them who works in for my friend who was friends with them, who was American, said, there's nothing going on in New York City on a Sunday night. You got to drive down, get a van, get a car, and drive down and listen to Matt Pinfield. He spins great music. So Radio had gotten a car and came down there. You know what I mean? Which was really cool. So it was like, I'm finding these old photos and things that I forgot about. You know what I mean? There was like some picture somebody took when I was at a Yankee game with Lenny Kravitz, and the Yankees put our names up on the board, and it was just, it just reminds me of some really funny stories.
I just went to a Yankees game with a Lenny as well.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, my daughter's name is Lennon. We call her Lenny.
Yeah.
I took her to her first Yankees game. But this reminds me to ask, have you found anything that you're just like forgot about, or you're like, holy shit, I can't get rid of this. This has to go up in the rotation. Anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I did find this really rare Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers like one-sided record that Shelter Records put out years ago. That when I was a kid, I bought it for like $12 because there wasn't much music out by Petty at the time. In fact, I think he only had one album out, and I was in love with it. And it was like called Official Live Leg, and I found out it was worth anywhere from $250 to $750. And I gave it to my friend who's a huge Tom Petty fan. Rather than try to sell it, I thought, man, I got to give this to my friend. He absolutely is a young artist from Los Angeles who's a singer-songwriter. And I was like, he will appreciate this record so much. I'm going to give it to him. You know what I mean? Instead of trying to make money off of it. I did find somebody made an action figure of me. I have no idea where it came from. And it's really hilarious. It's like, it makes me look like some kind of wrestler or something. And I do have the celebrity deathmatch character.
I was just about to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have that in like one of these hard plastics that they made. And they didn't I don't know that they gave away a lot of them, because what I was told is that many of the celebrity deathmatch characters were all recycled because, it was shot frame by frame, and they needed them as audience members. So they would redo the fighters as audience members watching the box, watching the fight.
That's cool.
And so I have one of those, which is here, which I've always held on to, but in moving, it looks a little beat up, like it's more of a beating than I did in the actual claymation thing, because of the amount of times that it's bounced around in a box being moved from location to location.
Wait, who did you fight in your celebrity death match?
I fought Jesse Camp.
Okay.
And it was
makes sense.
And none of us knew, it wasn't our real voices, where I've been, animated, where it's been my real voice and things like, on a Nickelodeon kids show called the Naked Brothers Band, which was a show that Holly Draper, who was an actress and director who was in 30 something, a show when I was 20 something. So I didn't really watch it. But she was a really talented woman. She reached out to me and said, "Hey, I got this, they made a movie. Uma Thurman was in it, Tony Shalhoub, a bunch of other people. They made an independent film, and then they kind of toned it down and turned it into a Nickelodeon show. And both the kids, the sons from that show, are now actually, movie stars, or they're on, big TV shows. But when they were little kids, I was on the show. It was funny because she was like, "Do you mind if we call you Matt Pinfield in this show? Because you're going to be a mean version of yourself." I go, "Not at all." So I play like this mean, like I'm the nemesis of the band. It's very much the opposite of my personality. Where usually I'm trying to help out artists, but in that one, I'm constantly, a nemesis to these young kids, which was pretty funny. But see, that was my real voice. And in the claymation thing of Celebrity Deathmatch, they didn't let you know if you won the fight or not. They did not, the MTV, but somebody pulled me aside during that. I said, "Well, do I win the fight at least?" And they go, "Well, all I can tell you is the animation department likes you better than Jesse." I'm like, all right. So I didn't, that was like the most they said. And Jesse was always cool with me. I like Jesse. He's a nice guy, but that gave me an idea of where that was going, But so you said you took your daughter?
I took my daughter to her first Yankees game on Sunday.
How was that? That must have been great.
It was magnificent, man. It was, as a Yankees fan, it was a huge bucket list check.
Yeah, that's so great.
And she's not like super into baseball, and but she loved every second of it. I even gave her a couple outs because it started raining. So they didn't stop the game, but we went under the cover, and I was like, "You want to get out?" It was like fifth, sixth inning. I was like, "You want to get out of here?" She's like, "How are we going to see who wins?"
Yeah.
All right.
That was great that she had fun. And
yeah. We took we were up in Connecticut. We took the Metro North down. And even that, I mean, she's 8 years old. Like, that is an hour. It can take a little bit of the excitement out of it. She was into it every step of the way. We walked around the Bronx afterwards because it was still daylight. I was like, "How else do you get to walk around the Bronx?"
Yeah, exactly. All I remember about the Bronx when I was a kid was just all like the beat up car repair and torn up car repair areas. And I always, he said, when we go to Yankee Stadium when I was a kid, you know what I mean? And oh man, this area looks super dangerous. Of course, years later, you realize that it wasn't quite as bad. I mean, I'm sure it was in 1977, but it's a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, it's so great you took your daughter to the game there. I love the Yankees. I mean, I always will. I don't care where I live. That was the team that I loved growing up, that my dad loved. And my dad was coach Little League. He always coached our team. And I was not a great baseball player. I was all right. You know what I mean? And then I was like, I tried the whole sports thing. I played football in junior high, and I was a center. Can you imagine? Because I'm not a big guy. I mean, I looked bigger on TV because I was so heavy set in those early MTV years. But I'm only like 5'6", you know what I mean? So, and I've lost so much weight because I got into shape. But yeah, but I even back then, but I would play center. I mean, and you get your ass handed to you, and then I wrestled. You know what I mean? In wrestling, I did all right at. But my sports career was over at the age of 15 because I had an aneurysm when I was 15. So I had they discovered a teen aneurysm that I had. And the joke is that when my head got ripped open on the one side, it now matches the other side where they had to cut into the side of my head. So literally, I don't know how I'm able to hold on to the music information from all the years of insanity. But yeah, that was crazy. But I was always again a big Yankee fan. And when I was on the radio in New York City, it was always great because we used to get to go to a Yankee game sometimes, but it was like go see the Yankees, go see the Rangers
with Lenny Kravitz. Just casual.
Though that was really funny, because I was invited to go to a baseball game with Lenny Kravitz, and Chevy Chase was in line in front of us at the bathroom. And this is the old Yankee Stadium. Even though this was a box that somehow Virgin Records had gotten that invited me and Lenny, his label, to go. If you wanted to use the bathroom, you still had to go. And I don't know how different, because I've been to the new Shea, but I haven't been to Yankee Stadium since it moved. So if you look at a lot of the stadiums that are out here in California where I live, nowadays they have and most of them have bathrooms, you know what I mean, in the
Yeah.
boxes. But in the old school Yankee Stadium, the legendary house the Ruth built, it was 500 pistols and two toilets. You know what I mean? And poor Chevy Chase went to go into the bathroom, and Lenny and I were just kind of standing behind him. We were all we just ran into him, and I remember asking him something about this movie that he was in pre Saturday Night Live called The Groove Tube, which was this really back when Kentucky Fried Movie, The Groove Tube.
Yeah.
Comedy movies that you would have shown at midnight movies like Rocky Horror Picture Show. And, and I remember him just saying something really funny about the guy who ended up directing it to me. And then he went into the bathroom and all these people start chanting, Chevy's taking a shit, Chevy's taking a shit. And I'm like, me and Lenny were horrified because poor Chevy Chase was trying to go to the bathroom. And these people are chanting, these drunk Yankee and Red Sox fans. I don't know who were in the thing. And I remember yelling out at him, hey guys, give this guy a break, man. Will you? It was just unbelievable. And he came out of the bathroom and he would almost turn blue. It was unbelievable. I will never forget that. Oh, it was so crazy. And that's one of my most interesting moments in Yankee Stadium.
Wow.
That's some pretty crazy stuff.
What channel was your animated stories on?
Oh, you mean the thing, the Rock Stories of Matt Pinfield? So here's the deal. So, what a lot of people may or may not know is for years, I kept involvement back and forth on and off with MTV and MTV networks. You know what I mean? So it originally started as a thing for MTVHive.com, which was, and now it's you can see it, it's out there for MTV.com. But it was on VH1 Classic, which became MTV Classic. And those Rock Stories I was there with this very talented woman who ended up going and working at some other, music publications. And we were just sitting there one day and she was trying to think of cool things we could do. And she goes, hey man, I love your stories, man. It wouldn't be a great idea if we animated them. And they had this idea to get and they did. They got specific animators from all over, young animators that were hungry from all over the world, and they filmed me telling a story, maybe about, being, a story about Chrissy Hind or something, with the Chili Peppers or Nirvana, or, it was. I remember, and so they would literally film me telling this 2-minute story. And they would send it to animators all over the world, like Puerto Rico. The LCD sound system one was phenomenal because when they did that one, and I remember asking James Murphy, hey man, what you think of the cartoon? He goes, my girlfriend's obsessed with it, man. She loves it. It was when we made it, it was not only Rock'em Sock'em robots they used in that, but they used a baby doll and they gave it the beard and his hair and it's his ginger look. It was fantastic. So I love that story because he told me that great story about how he was a bouncer at the legendary Club City Gardens underage. And I always love that story that he told me. And what a lot of people don't know, this is a really funny story, or a weird coincidence, is that area. I grew up in East Brunswick, New Jersey, which is by, it's by New Brunswick, by Rutgers, but it's also very close to Princeton University. So Princeton is next to, there's a part of Princeton called Princeton Junction. And all these guys are from right around there. Like John Popper lived there for a while from Blues Traveler, Chris Barron, Trey Anastasio from Fish. They were all from the same area. And the wild card was James Murphy was from the same town, LCD sound system. So he's like the only guy. He wasn't the jam band type guy like the other guys. But yeah, he was from that same exact area, which is pretty mind blowing. It's all was something in the water in that part of Princeton. But yeah.
I've seen Trey Anastasio the most out of any, notable person in New York City. I've seen it like the most random times he would just walk by and I'd be like, that was Trey again.
Yeah. He's a great guy. I like Trey a lot, man. I haven't run into him in a while. I think last time I ran into him was like at a Snow Patrol show that he was taking his daughter to, and we were doing
cool
a promo thing, and it was but I always like Trey a lot, and it's funny. I talk to you about, the records that I don't want to keep in the storage unit that I want other people to be able to enjoy. I'll sometimes take them to Princeton Record Exchange, which is in Princeton. And, Trey Anastasio, was the first employee ever at the store when it was a small store. And he told me he got paid in Led Zeppelin bootlegs. He was like literally not even getting paid money, but he wanted Zeppelin bootlegs. And that's what he would work there for, which is fantastic that he was that much of a music fan as a kid. I think he was about 15, 16, about under the table for that.
Oh, wow. I have to ask, do you just have like every person ever in your phone?
I have a lot of people in my phone. In fact, it's so funny because sometimes I'll like be looking for a number. And I'll go, oh, and then I'll go through and I'll go, oh man, I forgot I had that person in my phone, or I haven't thought about them in a couple of years. And, some of the people, I'm really surprised at how many people keep their number for a very, very long time.
I've only had one phone number ever, or one cell phone number ever.
Yeah.
I was a little late to the game, but.
Yeah, but you know what I got to tell you? I find this is one of the things that I've observed over the last years. I find that the musicians who changed their numbers the most are the ones who were probably sleeping around the most and giving their number to different people and then trying to get away from people that they were sleeping with. That's my guess. And it's not a lot, but it's enough that I'm like, oh, no wonder they changed their number again.
It's funny you say that, because any of my buddies who that has been their MO, those are the ones who have in my phone, it's like, Mike new, Mike 3, because it's just whatever.
Oh, I do that too. I've got like, it's really funny. I've got like new, and sometimes people change them for different reasons.
Yeah.
But I've kept the last phone number for 6 or 7 years. And the reason why I changed it last time was because I was just about to move to San Francisco to do a morning show on KFOG and work out of San Francisco. And I lost my phone like right before, and it was crazy. I don't know what I was doing, and they were like, well, you've got to get a new number. So, and I like the number so much because it has so many repeating numbers. It's so easy to remember and for people to remember. And literally, it wasn't something I created. It was like, they gave me like 3 choices. I'm like, well, that one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll take that phone number. And I'd rather not change it at this point, but but I know what you're talking about. It's cool, but you're funny that you said that about your friends.
Yeah, a few of my guy friends, they shall not be named, but you have been on our radar since day one. We have not to the extent of the encyclopedic knowledge, but we are just a couple music. We love music so much. We can't play music. When the pandemic started, this was a written series, and Abby had the idea to turn it into a podcast, and we did it. And since day one, Matt Pinfield's been top of the fucking whiteboard. And then it's just, for one reason or another, it just flows. You've always responded to our like Instagram stuff. And then we had Pete Yorn on, and I don't know how it came up, but Pete Yorn goes, let me text Matt Pinfield. And it was like, okay, you don't have to do that. And he was like, let me see what he says. And I was like, man, that's so great. It was adorable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Pete's, I love that song so much. Crystal Village by him. I always loved that song on his second album, Day I Forgot. And I just, the song to this day, it resonates with me in such an incredible way. And I remember Leslie Fram, who was my co-host of my morning show in New York on WRSP, who now is like, she's literally like the queen of Nashville. I mean, she's like, does all the major like components and all the incentives for new women in country, and works as one of the heads of CMT. And she's just amazing. I love her. And I've been so blessed to like work with some of the greatest women in the world in my career. Like, Alison Hagendorf, who was my assistant first. I hired out of Penn State to be my assistant at Columbia Records when I was A&R there. And she went on to do a lot of TV stuff too, but she was also the global head of rock for Spotify for a long time. And Leslie, and it's just been very, very fortunate. But me and Leslie had this joke on, we love Pete, and there was this place we were dying, because I love that song Crystal Village, and Leslie would always, I remember Jack White was doing a pop-up store for the Dead Weather, and he was playing in like down close to Chinatown in New York City. and there was a place there called Christie Village, and Leslie knew how much I loved Crystal Village, so she'd take a picture of it and send it to me all the time.
Oh,
And I would always ask Pete to play that song whenever I was like, Pete, you gonna do Crystal Village tonight? You know what I mean? I love that song. But yeah, Pete's a good guy, another guy from Jersey, you know.
yeah, that's right. Okay.
So
Lots of Jersey folks. I love
yeah.
Jersey.
Yeah, I love Jersey too. I mean, I love going back and visiting it a lot. I mean, I got to be honest, I'm super happy living in Los Angeles. You know, I met my girlfriend here, who we live together now. She's just the greatest. I mean, she's a real soulmate, man. She knew when I realized how much she loved and knew about music. I was like, hey, yes, we need to hang out more. And you know, she was friends with a lot of my friends, and they worked in film and TV production, and worked on a lot of videos from everybody from Queens of the Stone Age to Lady Gaga. And so there was like a real understanding of, you know, having been around music and the business and just people. And it was important. So that's good. You know, I found love out here, which I never expected to. And I think you find it when you're not looking. But anyway, that's for sure. But anyway, so far so good, and I'm in good spirits. You know, I've been sober 3 years and over 2 months now, and that was a big life-changing thing for me, because you know I certainly I always equated that to having worked in bars from the time I was young, and I mean the drinking age was 18 when I was coming up in New Jersey and New York, and I'd be going. Check your ID. I've been going to CBGBs, at like 16, 17 years old to see bands. And then eventually I got a job DJing at the clubs out in the central New Jersey area. And I love doing it. But, I certainly like to drink and I like to party at that time and do things like that. But it just became a situation where eventually it stopped working. It was still one of those things I joke. It's like, at first it's fun. Then it's fun with problems. Then it's all problems. And when it gets to all problems, it's time to give it a break and figure out how to check yourself. And that's what's good for me. But music, like you were talking about it, and it's interesting because I mean the way I see it, Ryan and Abby, is music. I can't even imagine what life would be like without music. I equate every memory that I have. I really like the way that I come up. Sometimes you'll hear me talk about dates of singles, like Summer in the City by Love and Spoonful, 1966, or records that came out in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It all is associated sometimes with a memory, or there are some records that are timelessly, just give you that incredible feeling. But I love music so much, like I just can't imagine a world without it, and which is why I feel so blessed that I was able to continue to do work around it and make that my thing, because that's all I ever wanted to do. I mean, we didn't, I was when I was a kid, my father was a school teacher. They wanted him to be a physicist. He had been in the Marines in the Korean War. He came back from and literally he went to, he had a heart condition very young, around like 25. He had like a heart attack at 25 years old, because and then when they used to, like they want, when you were like doing things, like the military would give you speed, you know what I mean, to keep going. And of course, if you couldn't take that, so if your body didn't deal with it well. So he got an honorable discharge, and he was an officer. And then eventually he went back to college. So he went to school in Athens, Georgia, which is where I was born, because I was born while he was there. And of course, the REM, B-52's connection to that incredible town. And, he was there, he adopted my oldest brother, because he had known my mom since he was about 13 years old. They're from Plainfield, New Jersey, which is a town that George Clinton grew up in. He wasn't born there, but it was where George Clinton came from. And he knew my mom when they were in school, and then eventually, she, back in those days, you can only imagine, and then late 40s, early 50s. Divorce was tough, but her husband was running around, and she was like, she was over that. She wasn't having it.
He was changing
So
his number.
yeah, probably.
That's the euphemism now. For
Yeah, exactly. It sure
adultery.
was. But so anyway, getting back to this whole thing, I mean, it was my dad was, he was a really smart guy. We wanted him to continue on to be a physicist. He became a physics teacher, and because he had my brother, my sister was born in Albany, Georgia, and I was born in Athens, and then my dad got a teaching job in New Jersey. So I wasn't in Athens very long, but I always feel that connection to that city. And it's really funny because there was a band from Hoboken called the Bongos who I loved and played on my college radio show. And those guys were like, they literally, because of my friendship with them, they go, hey, we just played with this band from Athens, Georgia. We told them that we had a friend who was born there, and he wanted us to give you their 7-inch single. And it was REM giving them Radio Free Europe and Sitting Still on the Hip Tone record label for my college radio show. So the Bongos handed me this 45, and I put on Radio Free Europe, and the other side Sitting Still, which is another song I still love that, we recorded for Murmur. And I just fell in love with that. And I was just so happy. And also, I was in high school, when I was in record stores, and I would scour record stores looking for cool stuff. And I was going through the 45 bin, and I saw this B-52 single with a girl. It looked like the 1950s with like paper plates spinning in the air. And it was the Rock Lobster 52 Girls 7-inch. And I turned it over in the record store and saw Athens, Georgia. I went, oh, wow, where I was born. And I'm sitting there in New Brunswick, New Jersey at a record store. So I bought that, those are the things that I had early because I made the connection to that. And I just used to love, I remember hearing Rock Lobster and just how kooky and cool it was at the same time as kids. And we really loved to annoy other people with songs of, when we were at that age, and we thought it would drive them crazy, especially people that were at that point probably listening to Saturday Night Fever still. And I was, and no disrespect, because I love the Bee Gees, but especially the 60s Bee Gees, and even Main Course, the album with Jive Talking on it, Nights on Broadway. I was at the age where you would get really tired of Saturday Night Fever if you were like into rock or anything. And then punk came along, and we were those snotty kids that loved punk and new wave, and it was one of those things that we that period of time. But I also loved hard rock. I loved everything. And again, it's really interesting because I don't know if you ever talk about this with people, but I think there's a period, when you're a late teen or in your early 20s, especially when there's certain things that are in the mainstream that you've heard a million times, and you're like, I don't like that band anymore. I don't like that record. And there are records like that are classics that I grew to learn to love again. You know what I mean? That at the time, they were overplayed on New York radio, and I was like, I don't want to hear this again. And it was even part of the motivation for me to get into radio. Why I loved college radio was I was like, there's so many great bands, they're not playing, and great artists. And that was really important to me. It was about exposing new artists. It was so, the fact that years later, of course, I did 120 minutes. It was a perfect vehicle when I got the opportunity to do it, because I was always, trying to find new. And it's so funny. There's a picture in my yearbook when I was a junior of me holding like a record, showing people like a Boomtown Rats album or something, that nobody really knew. You know what I mean? And I remember seeing the Boomtown Rats. We used to go, my friend, his dad had the electrician's place behind the New York Palladium, the legendary place where we saw the Clash do London Calling, which was so amazing. Like I got to, I have 2 tattoos, and one of them is the Clash. Paul Simonon smashing his bass, because I was there that night. I got to see, I was literally in 1979. I was into punk rock from like minute one, because I wanted something that really spoke to my angst. And the funny story is that I got the Ramones album in May of 1976 when I was a kid, and I am still friends with this guy, but we were both these Irish kids who were born on the same day that were in junior high. I did have a band then called Thunderhead I was the lead singer of. But anyway, we liked the same girl. And the thing was, we got in a fight in the bathroom over a girl on our birthday. So both of us got suspended on our birthday in junior high school in 9th grade. The difference is my dad was a school teacher in the school system that I went to. His dad was a total mobster, like a legendary, like Copacabana mobster, cool guy. But he was, but his dad was like full on, like I'm talking about New York mob, and New York, New Jersey mob, like legendary. And his dad was like, whatever, you know what I mean? My dad was like, Matt, he dropped me off at home because I got suspended from school and said, mow the lawn. And I ignored him. And when he went back to school, I hitchhiked up to this department store called Corvettes, this record store. And it just so, or this record department of like a clothing store, kind of like what a Walmart would be now or whatever. I'm just using that as an example for people that may not know that. But they used to have these department stores where they would sell everything from electronics to clothes to everything that people need, home goods. And so Corvettes had a cool record store, a record department. A lot of people talk about it in bands, all over the Northeast. And I went in there. My sister-in-law was working there. I never got free records because, they were, nobody was stealing. She wasn't a thief anyway, and I wasn't a thief. So, but I went in there and I go, I got some money. It's my birthday. Is there anything new that is interesting that I could buy? And she literally goes, well, I don't know. And she reaches under the counter and goes, but I heard this is pretty good. And she pulls out the first Ramones album. And I look at the album cover and I go, who are these guys? They're all leather. They look so different than everything else that was out at the time. I turned it over and went, oh my God, 14 songs. Holy shit. Because, most albums at that point had 8. You know what I mean? So that was like, that's what was happening on a Zeppelin album or an Aerosmith album. Maybe they had 9 at that period of time. So I remember buying that record and going home and putting it on here and Blitzkrieg Bop and beat on the brat, dropping that needle on that record. And immediately realized that some of my friends liked it and some of them hated it. I realized how divisive and polarizing punk rock was from minute one. And it was an interesting thing because it was also what was cool about punk rock back then was it really wasn't about a uniform. It was more about attitude and punk, new wave, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's why you had everything from Patti Smith and Talking Heads coming out of, that, whole CBGB scene, and television. It was all really
Love
different.
Television so much.
Yeah, such a great band. So, I mean, I just was really attracted to that era and new things that were coming out at that period of time because a lot of things didn't really sound like anything else. Some things would have like a power pop vibe to them that I love that too, like Squeeze and Joe Jackson and things of that nature. Yeah,
Yeah, dude.
I've got a great Joe Jackson story for you guys. So in 1978, I'll tell you, I had a
I'm
week.
so happy right now.
Right.
I just go. Sorry, I interrupted, but I am beaming inside my heart of hearts. Joe Jackson story.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. So this is that time that I'm talking about where the bands at the time, there was the whole new wave thing was starting to happen. And some of the bands were getting some airplay in New York. There was a great radio station that was a top 40 station called WPIX, which for like 3 years, 78 to 80, was playing everything from that was popular at the time from Fleetwood Mac to Eagles, but also playing, like on a Saturday, they'd play an import of Psycho for Sister Europe. They play like XTC. They play all this different stuff. And you were like hearing all these new things, right? So on the radio. And Joe Jackson even got airplay on the stations, PLJ and NEW, of course, in New York at the time, which were the FM rock stations. But in one weekend, we went to see on a Thursday night, we got in a station wagon and we went down to see the Police at the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia. And the show was $2. So it was $2 to see the Police. And we, when we went to the, what became Ticketmaster, but was called Ticketron at the time. And it, they'd have them in record stores, but the one in our town, East Brunswick, was oddly enough in a luncheonette. So like, whatever, so the funniest thing in the world is this guy, and I've told Sting and Stuart Copeland this story. The guy he looks at us and goes, hey, this band of police, you better enjoy it while you can, because they're going nowhere. I remember this guy said that. And I told them they thought it was really funny, obviously. But this was back in 78, when it was really anything like new wave or punk. There was kind of a divisive thing where some people were into it and some people were adamantly against it. You know what I mean? But sure enough, the police were fantastic. We drove down there in a station wagon. They were incredible. And they had to do Can't Stand Losing You twice because they didn't have enough songs. So they hadn't come out with Message in a Bottle yet, or the second album, which would come out towards the end of 1979. So here we are in 78. We take a station wagon. That's a Thursday night, $2 to see the police. The next night, Joe Jackson plays at this club called the Fast Lane in Asbury Park, New Jersey. So we head to that show. And Joe was incredible. And I snuck backstage. I was 16, and I went back and, the bouncers tried to throw me out basically. And what is this kid doing? And he goes, no, he's all right. He's super to me. And he and Graham, maybe the bass player, were super nice to me. And I did the same thing when Ian Hunter and Mick Ronson were back there because, I certainly wanted, I would do that. I would always go, I would find my way. And when no one's looking to run backstage or do things like that when I was a kid, because I wanted to meet them. People whose music I love. So it's amazing because the next night it was Elvis Costello at the Jadwin Gym at Princeton for this year's model, the second Elvis Costello and the Attractions, the second album and the first with the Attractions. And it was great, but Elvis had just gone through that really crazy thing that happened where he was fighting with like Bonnie Bramlett and some people in a hotel. They had a big argument and it was big press with Rolling Stone. He made a comment about Ray Charles that he said it was always the thing he regretted the most in his life because he would have gotten to work with Ray Charles if he'd never made that comment, but he was really just trying to egg them on and piss them off. And I think there was a lot of, who knows, cocaine going on in the room with either Joe or the other people that were there from those rock bands at the time. But it was like kind of a, they were standing there in the suits, Elvis Costello and the Attractions and the other guys. And it's really funny because one of those guys, I think that was in that fight, that altercation that night is a well-known rock star that I'm very good friends now through the recovery world. And I've never asked him. He's a legend. You know what I mean? He's like, this guy is like a absolute legend from the 60s on. And I've never asked him. And I was in his car Monday night. I'm like, one day I'm going to ask him about that night with Elvis Costello and what happened because, now this guy and I are super, very close friends. But I haven't gone there yet. But so Elvis played the shortest set of the three, but it was great. And, Joe Jackson was very nice to me. So it was an incredible weekend to think you're going to see those. So guys, I didn't see Joe Jackson again until like 2010 or 11, right? And it was when I was doing a morning show in New York City. And I'm walking down the street in the village on Varick Street, and on the west side, lower side. And I got off the air at 10 a.m. and I'm starving. So I was like, there's one pizza parlor on Varick that will have a slice of pizza that's open at like 10:15. So I run over there. Or I go to like the store. There was like a place to buy like the British music magazines like Mojo and Uncut and Q and all that back then. And which still exists, of course, but a lot of it's online. And not Q, but Mojo and Uncut exist. Anyway, I'm walking up the street. And there's a guy coming in the other direction. And it's Joe Jackson. And, by this time I had heard, all kinds of stories that he wasn't very nice and wasn't very friendly. And all I had was my one memory of him being very nice to me when I was a kid. And so I walk and go, I see him. Hey, Joe. And he looks at me and goes, hey, Matt. So he recognized me, I guess, from television, right? So I go, hey, man, I've wanted for years to tell you, how great you were and how nice you were to me when I was a kid. Thank you for being so cool to me when I came backstage on the Look Sharp tour. And he goes, I was.
Oh my goodness.
I go, yes, you were. He goes, Matt, you must have caught me on a good day, which is the funniest line of all time. I always laugh. And then we had a conversation about what he'd been up to. And he was just completely, really sweet and a great man and nice to me. But I'd heard all these crazy stories, just about how he, didn't take suffer fools gladly and, sometimes was a little difficult to work with. But I never experienced that side of him. So all I have is a great memory when it comes to that.
This is blowing my mind because no joke, I do this thing with my daughter. I just put on music and let her digest it. And if I overthink it, it becomes a chore. And so I try not to overthink it. And you said two things that make me think of this. One, when I was just in Connecticut last weekend, we drove to get food, and now she's in the habit, and she goes, "Put on some music, Dad." And first thing that pops in my head was Joe Jackson. So we listened to like 5 songs on his top of his Spotify, just jamming out. I haven't listened to that in 5 years, easy. So it's so weird that you say that. Also, the first band when she was a baby, she gravitated towards reggae. But I would say, like, starting at 5, The Clash, for some reason, and I love, 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 love The Clash. I would put that on, and that was what she dug. And I didn't question it. I embraced it, and I started buying her all this Clash shit. So she still has a bunch.
It's so cool to hear buying her the Clash stuff. Those shows, I gotta say that those shows in that era, seeing the Clash in the Jam as many times as I did, I was just I was blown away. I mean, Paul Weller, and that's the crazy thing that I think I pinch myself in my life about, is that, like having Mick Jones of the Clash come and like guest spin with me and just show up and hang out at the club, and the same one that Radiohead came to in New Jersey, and just like stand there with me. And I'm like, Mick Jones of the Clash, or having lunch with Paul Simonon of the Clash, who smashed his bass on the cover of London, at like a Fridays in like Monmouth County, New Jersey. Seriously, he was like promoting a band called Havana 3 a.m. And I'm like, they said, "Oh, Paul Simonon is going to come down and just let's hang out and have lunch with him." I'm like, I can't believe I'm sitting in a Fridays with Paul Simonon of the Clash. You know what I mean? Like the guy who, it's like the legends. And I love them so much, and seeing them and how visceral.
I can't believe you were at that fucking show. That is wild.
That was, I loved that club, the New York Palladium. It was a club. It was actually a concert venue. It used to, before I was old enough to go there, it was called the New York Academy of Music, and it changed its name to the Palladium. And I saw some pretty incredible shows there. Thin Lizzy with Graham Parker and the Rumor, and obviously I said the Boomtown Rats, the Police, the Jam multiple times, the Clash. I mean, there were so many great bands. I mean, I'm not even remembering all the shows that I saw there, but the legendary Lou Reed live album, Rock and Roll Animal, was recorded there. There were so many cool things about that place. And the great thing was kind of how we had that free reign when we were teenagers. And we didn't even, because of, and, crazy stuff that we would do. Like I remember me and my friend Jerry, whose father was the guy who owned the electrician shop, pitching a ride with Andy Warhol and the guy that he was with over to a party for the Boomtown Rats. And inside the party, I had been like one of those guys who was like, how you fake it till you make it. And I was like calling up like Bowie's and Pete Townsend's and, people's press people trying to get interviews for my guy. And the woman recognized my name. This woman, Vicky Rose, who was working with Boomtown Rats, because I think she worked with Bowie as well. And she goes, I go, "Hey, it's Matt Pinfield." She goes, "Oh yeah, Matt, yeah, come in." So we go to this after party. Andy Warhol had given us a ride. So they're sort of like, "Oh, who are these kids?" And we end up in this party, and it's like Rick Derringer drunk at the bar, and then David Johansen sitting with Bob Geldof in the back of the, it was just like, and we're just these kids, obviously pretending we belong there. And of course we don't, but it was just the funny stuff that we would do. And I love that venue so much. So, when they turned it into a disco after a while, that was a very disappointing moment. But I'm grateful for the shows that I saw. I saw Cheap Trick, UFO, and Rush one night there, all in the same bill when I was young. I saw so many different people.
You mentioned CBGB, and I got to go to one show there.
Yeah, which one was it?
It was the So Glows and a band called the Static Jacks open up.
Yeah, I like both of those bands. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Absolutely.
However, before I've been to the club like maybe 5 times, because it was just, when I moved to New York, it was just open. And I would go there and walk around, and each time I would get more bold, and I would I'd peek my head in, and then no one was there. The doors were open. No one would stop me. And I walked around. And then I would leave again and get on stage. And then I'd go to, the bathrooms there, the famous bathroom, man. And I had a disposable camera. I remember I was taking photos.
Yeah, because you had to do that back then. And it's it's funny. People sometimes say, I say, man, I wish I had a camera for that. And then other times I go, I'm glad other people didn't have a camera for that. Like for
Oh
some
yeah.
other things in life. No, but I mean, I think one of the things that and I had this conversation last night about, how much David Bowie had to do with being a big part of my taste and a seismic shift in my love of music when I was younger. Because obviously I loved everything. I was from the time I was like my earliest memories, 3, 4, 5 years old. I remember either playing records that belonged to my older brother or sister on this 45 player, to like driving the car with my dad and hearing a bunch of stuff that was on AM radio that was actually great in that period of time in the 60s. But I think one of the things that was really interesting for me was discovering David Bowie at the age of 12, and it was the Diamond Dogs album. It was 1974. I heard Rebel Rebel and on the radio and went, oh man, he's saying something about Hot Tramp. What is this? I'm like, what is this all about? And it just sounded different and cool. So I remember it was about my birthday and I had some money and I bought the Diamond Dogs album, which is a very dark David Bowie album and a great record. I love the record so much, but
Abby and I were just talking about this record.
yeah, it's one of my favorite records because it was a gateway record for me. And it made me go back and then, like mow more lawns and deliver more papers and buy Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, Hunky Dory and pinups, at that period of time. Probably Minnesota the World and B, but he also had that period where, it was interesting where he was doing like Rubber Band and the Laughing Gnome and stuff. So I bought this album and I was like, I don't know about that, but I love Bowie. And, for me, people ask me about, pivotal moments in your life. And one of them was obviously when and I had seen Bowie. I was at that concert now that's finally been released on an album, 1976 Station to Station tour at the Nassau Coliseum. I was there that night with my girlfriend from junior high and her older sister who was like sleeping with Johnny Thunders. She was like, and so she got us tickets and we were kids. We were 14, 14, 13. We went and saw Bowie do Station to Station out there. And then, of course, I saw him many times over the years. And I even saw him in, the Elephant Man on Broadway. My high school girlfriend bought me like third row tickets and we saw Bowie on Broadway. But the craziest thing when I think about this is when I went to work at MTV. I don't know if you knew this, but I was obviously a Bowie fan most of my life. And, of course, there were periods in the 80s where I didn't love albums as much as the things that were from the 70s. And there were some things that were good and some that were phoned in my opinion. But, I was always, no matter what, would always be willing to give anything David did a chance because it was such a pivotal artist in my development of my musical tastes. And I got turned on by him because people would trade cassettes and he'd be doing a radio show in Philly and playing the Mekons and Kraftwerk and whatever, like he was always, turning people on to music. And I was always a sponge. So I finally have the opportunity to meet Bowie. And it's, I go to work at MTV full time. I get a job as manager of music programming. I'd come out of programming the radio station on the Jersey Shore for about 5 years. I was music director, and then I was program director of one of the first 13 alternative stations that was commercial in the country. And I'd worked there for 6 years before that, doing weekends, driving through snowstorms. I'd take any shift they would give me, like anybody else. You pay your dues, right? You got to do what you got to do. I mean, I just loved radio so much. I wanted to play music for people. There was no internet. We're talking about like 84 to 90. Then I ran the station from 90 right up to about 95 when I went to work at MTV full time. Now, in 93, I filled in on 120 minutes with Depeche Mode, but I stayed in touch with them, and eventually they were making some changes in the music department at MTV. And there were 3 positions open, and they hired me as manager of music programming, which was a beautiful thing. And then I got that opportunity. So as I'm there pretty shortly in, they're like, we're having dinner with David Bowie, and it's going to be at this place called the Bowery Bar, which is not to be confused with the venue, the Bowery Ballroom. And so we get there, and it's like, I meet Bowie when he comes in, and I just say to him, I go, I just want you to know that you've always been one of my most important artists in my life. And he was very, very nice, very friendly. And I have photos of me and him meeting for the first time. And I And I was talking to him for a while, and he was really laughing. But then this is one of the things that will crack you guys up. Imagine that there's like a small restaurant, and that there's all the tables are filled with people. Some are from Virgin Records, some are from this and management, the other MTV employees, this and thing. And then there's the table with David and Iman. All right. They put me right in front of David Bowie and Iman. And around the table was the chairman of MTV Networks, Tom Freston, the president, Judy McGrath, Van Toffler, who was really high up then, Andy Schoen, who was my boss, who was senior vice president of music and talent, Patty Guzzi. So literally my bosses, everybody that was the head of the company are sitting there, and I am just, like I'm right in front of Bowie and Iman. And I will admit that I did have a Jack and Coke or two so that I could, it was like I was scared it was going to go terribly wrong, I didn't even give it a thought, to be honest with you, because it was just like so unbelievably quick that this happened. Like, yeah, Matt knows a lot about Bowie. We're going to put Matt in front of Bowie. And by the end of the night, we talked about Mick Ronson. We talked about a million things. By the end of the evening, he says to me, like, first of all, Patty Guzzi, who ended up married to Steve Lillywhite for a while, who was one of my bosses. She goes to Iman, she goes, would you say you know as much about David's music as Matt does? And Iman goes, I don't know if that's possible. It was like really funny. They were joking around. And, and I wasn't, it was purely out of love. I wasn't sitting there trying to impress Bowie. I had all these questions. I wanted to know if when Mick Ronson did White Light, White Heat on Play Don't Worry, was that a leftover track from the pinup sessions? I wanted to know things like that as a Bowie fan, right? So, but by the end of the dinner, David goes to me, Matt, I haven't told anybody this yet, but I'm going to go out on the road with Nine Inch Nails, and I don't want to do any singles. Would you help me with my set list? I'd love to get your suggestions for the set list. So literally, David Bowie at this point is asking me for suggestions for a set list. And just out of the top of my head, thinking quickly, I said, well, Nirvana just covered the Man Who Sold the World, and Some Type of Pilots did Andy Warhol, and Pumpkins did a version of Moon Age Daydream. So I think all those songs would be great. He goes, well, can you make me a list of some more things that you think? And he ended up, I sent a list, and I remember this night was so crazy. I ended up sending a list, fax, I think, at that period of time. And Andy Schoen, who will speak at a lot of, for corporations, tells this story. And so does Stephen Hill, who used to be the head of BET, because he was right there with me. And he was like, and I remember Bowie giving me his phone number. And Stephen Hill, luckily, grabbed that and held onto it, because it was so surreal for me that when I left that night, I went out and had some more cocktails, and I'm glad if I had lost it, it would not have been a really good thing. I was running around the West Village, just kind of, walking into the Golden Lion or whatever these things are called, and going, yeah, I wasn't telling people, but in my head, I was going, oh my God, David Bowie just gave me his phone number, one of my lifelong idols. And so the next day at work, I get to the MTV News department, and there's, Stephen Hill goes, hey, I held on to this for you. It was Bowie's number.
Do you still have it?
I don't, man. I moved around 100 times. I don't. It was probably in my office. I had emails from Cameron Crowe and Lou Reed and the stuff. These are like, I'm still friends with Cameron, but Lou's no longer alive. And Lou wrote me some unbelievable things. And I regret not having printed out those and some Bowie emails that Bowie had sent me. But this is like, at this point in time, next thing I know, I'm, going up there for the rehearsals for Bowie and Trent up in Connecticut is where they did their first date for that tour. So I went to that. And then, later on, there's a night where me and Tom Freston, who's the chairman of the company, we go to see Bowie, and David comes off the stage and goes, hey, Matt, he goes, how was I tonight, man? It was the show good? And I'm thinking to myself, David Bowie, of course it was good. Like I was like, yeah, David, it was great, man. And but fast forward, right? Quite a few years, we were occasionally, we would stay in touch, but it had been a little while since I'd seen him, and I'd left MTV and gone to Los Angeles and worked with Jimmy Iovine and those guys, and did that TV show FarmClub.com, which was way ahead of its time, because it was a record label, a TV show, and a website. Like, it was very, very different And that's a whole nother time to talk about it. But before I hit it, I wanted to tell you the Bowie story because I thought you guys would, as Bowie fans, would appreciate it. One of the things that was amazing to me was when the TV show Farm Club ended, I moved back and got a job at Columbia Records. So I'd always wanted to do A&R. And at one point, one of the guys at Epic, David Massey, who's a British, who signed, his mom managed Lulu, and he signed Oasis and many other people over here in the States. He always saw, he was like, man, he used to say to me, even when I was just programming MTV, I can't believe how diverse your taste is and how you like can pull. He knew it wasn't just one thing, that he goes, I could listen to a lot of different styles of music, and he was impressed with that. And he wanted to hire me doing A&R before I went out to do the thing with Jimmy Iovine. But they couldn't move it in that quarter quickly enough. And when I got the offer from Jimmy to move and be part of Farm Club, which I'm so glad I did, that's what I did. But then I came back and worked across the building at Columbia Records. Will Botwin, who now manages, Brandy Carlisle and a bunch of people.
Yeah.
I love it, and so many other people. Will hired me over there, and Donnie Einer, and hired me to do A&R. And so I move with my ex-wife, who I'm still very, very, very close friends with. And we have a 23-year-old daughter. I have two daughters. One is in her 30s, and she's making films out here in Los Angeles and working on getting her career going out here in film. And my other daughter is going to grad school, but she's so anyway, I would just say, when she was a baby, she was like 1.5, we moved from Los Angeles back to New York, and I'm going to be starting to do A&R. And I'm there for a couple months, 2001, and we had a relocation apartment on 2nd and 38th Street. But I decided that I'm going to move right down by the World Trade Center, and because I want a bigger apartment with more room. Because coming from Los Angeles and originally being from Jersey, I wanted some space. I had a lot of CDs and records, and I was just like, I knew it wasn't all going to fit there, but I just was looking for something that was more reasonable, and it wasn't crazy expensive to be down there in that financial district at the time. Well, I moved into that apartment 10 days before 9/11. And so I literally was, we were only there, like Tom packed some boxes, and we were there that morning, and it was just, absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, my daughter, crazy enough, my daughter was supposed to be in Battery Park daycare that morning, and I didn't take her because she was earache the night before. And those parents didn't know if their kids were alive or dead for 8 hours. There was no way to reach them. And the women who worked in the Battery Park daycare were so amazing. They put those kids on a boat and got them over to Jersey City. Not one of those children were hurt, which was just unbelievable. But I can't imagine that I wouldn't have had a heart attack. I don't know what I would have done of that feeling of being out of control, not knowing if my daughter, my baby girl, was okay. It was unbelievable. But we went through that whole thing, and we were okay. We lost friends. We saw a lot of things, but we got out of there. At this point we had we're living in a relocation apartment up on 50th and 8th Street. I get a call from Tony Visconti, Bowie's producer, who of course by this time I become friends with, because he had seen me singing 2 T-Rex songs on a T-Rex tribute night, which was at the Time Cafe years ago. They would do these nights. It was like me and Richard Barone and Joey Ramone, although Joey was sick that night, so I sang Baby Strange for him, and then did the Slider. And that's the night I met Tony Visconti, when he was still with May Pang, his second wife. And had the convert. Oh, is that my phone? It is a Seattle number.
New number. It's a guy friend. Be like, hey, I had to change my number.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me. I'm gonna get rid of it. I'm gonna decline. How do I decline? Hold on. I don't know who it is. It might be Chris Novoselic. He's actually coming to town early.
Oh,
next
that's
week.
funny. We're interviewing Jillian Ray, who plays with
from Third Secret.
Next week. She's on the show.
Yeah, that's
week.
great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're gonna connect. We're gonna meet my girlfriend hook up with Chris this week coming up. See him. That's great. Yeah, she's really cool. And I think she's great, and I love what they're doing with those 2 records. But I'll get back to the story, because I know it's kind of crazy, and I've gone on a side, but I wanted to tell you the Bowie thing, because at this point, we had gone that day. We luckily, nobody, the cell phone service didn't work, but we were able to, I literally will never forget that my daughter had an earache the night before. So I was going to, as an A&R guy, you're out scouting bands late anyway, or in the studio. So I thought I could go to work at like 11. So I didn't take her to the daycare because I could have been walking right under the World Trade at that period of time. And I could have been on my way back and then not be able to get to her, which would have been just, I can't even imagine. But I will just say this. So she was going to go to the doctor. I get a call from my father-in-law at the time who says, "Are you guys watching TV?" I said, "No, but she's watching kids shows." He goes, "Look out your window." And my window, I could see the first plane, like the burning in the building. And then I saw the second plane hit from the opposite direction. Literally, we were on 35th floor. And it was crazy. And just without going too far deep into that day, that what ended up happening was like, luckily we were blessed enough to get out of there. And we ended up, like having to, I kept to the vehicle that I had in the center of town where the first relocation apartment was. Luckily, I didn't move it down by where we lived, or we never would have gotten the car out of there again, or it probably would have crushed. That kind of thing. But we had the vehicle, and the World Trade Center, of course, with all of that coming down, the only things that were open that day, not the tunnels, but George Washington Bridge was open for like another 3.5 hours after, and then the Midtown Tunnel going out to Long Island and Queens. So I got the vehicle and I got us out over the GWB. I'm coming up the turnpike, passing all the emergency vehicles coming from all the other cities, and we had to go out there and, we literally had to leave our building. We just took like what we had, baby carriage, baby bottles of formula, and clothes on our backs and a wallet. And we got the hell out of there. And it was a crazy day. But eventually I had gone back to one of my storage units in New Jersey. And I remember seeing the Diamond Dogs sheet music book. Okay. Because I had to go through there. I was literally finding old t-shirts and swag to wash at like one of those extended stay places because we didn't have clothes, you know what I mean? So we had to get, or buy a few new things to wear, So I find this Diamond Dogs book and I look at it, this music book, and I go, damn it, man, why I never had Bowie sign this thing? And I don't ask anybody to sign anything, just because I just never did really, but I thought, man, I should have asked David, which was just kind of odd because, all right, let's fast forward a couple of weeks. And I get a call from Tony Visconti up in my office saying, "Hey, I've got this new artist, Christine Young. I'd really like you to sign the city and see if you have any interest in her." And Christine was great. She opened for Morrissey. She'd done some stuff, and her and Tony were always, not only was he a producer, but they were romantically involved. But and she was wonderful. It was like, I get the call. I go down. I'm living in an 8th and 50th apartment on, it's a place called Longacre House. It's temporary. And I go down to CBGB's gallery. We still had CBGB's gallery, right? Which was right next to CBGB's. It was for the acts that might have been a little more soft or a little different in direction than, full-on volume. They were acoustic acts, or they were leaning a little more on the alt side of things that were a little different. So Christine was playing there, but I'm sitting there in my chair because there's chairs set up there, folding chairs. And I feel a tap on my shoulder, and it's David Bowie. And I go, "David, how you doing?" And he goes, "Hey, Matt, what do you think of Nancy and Ken being blown out at Virgin?" Because his record label, he had a key man clause with Virgin Records. And if Ken or Nancy Berry, who were the heads of the company at the time, were no longer there, he was a free agent to leave the record label. But it wasn't really the whole reason why he tapped me in the shoulder. And I just look at him and I go, "David, I lost the apartment, and I went back to my old storage and I found a Diamond Dogs sheet music book." He goes, "I never asked anybody to sign anything." And I thought to myself, man, I should ask David to sign this. He looks at me and goes, "Oh, I'll sign anything." He goes, "What are you doing right now?" And I go, "Well, after the show, I was just going to go back up and I was going to go just have dinner, and see my daughter and my wife." And he goes, "Come have dinner with me." So literally, Bowie, there's a town car. And what I remember the most about it is the license plate said Bowie 1 on the back, which was his driver, right? And it was just like, I guess, the guy who would drive him around New York City. And I get in the back of this town car with Bowie. It drops us off in Little Italy. It's like his favorite restaurant. We walk through the doorway, through the kitchen, and out into the back into this garden area. And literally, I'm sitting there, and then Christine and Tony Visconti show up. I remember us, and David asking me, Matt, you got to tell me your 9/11 story, like. So I'm sitting there with Bowie, and we're doing that. And he goes, listen, I want you to come to Looking Glass Studios. That's where Philip Glass had owned the studio, and he said that he wanted to play the new record that he was working on. So Mario McNulty, the engineer who always worked with Tony, still works with a lot of people. Mario's great. We're friends, and Tony I've been friends with for years now. They just done most of what was the original Heathen record. And the reason I say most of the original Heathen record, because David changed the tracks on it after this chance meeting we had at his place. And so what happened was, I go in, and I remember I go to meet David there. And at this point, Tony's not there yet. Mario's there. I was there for this moment that was wonderful because it was the seat. I see Tony Visconti, the producer. Mick Rock comes down, the legendary photographer, and Bowie. Well, Tony and Bowie had already, of course, worked on this album, but Mick reuniting with them, I was there for that moment. But the really incredible thing was I was sitting there, and David's in like a little off studio side green room. I walk in, and David goes, Matt, I got to tell you, he goes, Interpol, and we're not talking about the band, we're talking about the organization, the police organization. He goes, they found these outfits that were stolen off the stage back in the mid 70s. My original stuff from like Aladdin, Saint He goes, they're mine. He goes, I want them back. Somebody was trying to sell them online in Portugal. So they found them for him, and he was so happy that he'd gotten that stuff back. And then we sat around, and Mario played the original version of the album Heathen for us. And we all sat there, and we hung, we talked for a while. I did a lot of really intense listening because, I'm sure David wanted to know what I thought. And then David says to me, hey, Matt, I'm going to reach out to you. I really want to pick your brain about some ideas. And I said, oh, yeah, David, anytime. Here I am thinking, yeah, he's going to, sure, that's right. David Bowie's going to reach out to me. I don't think so. But that's really, really kind of him. And one day, I'm like, fast forward like a week and a half, 2 weeks maybe, and I'm sitting there. I had just walked down to that famous recording studio called the Hit Factory. And Steve Thompson, who mixed Appetite for Destruction, worked with Bowie and Tina Turner, tons of people over the years. I was approaching him to do a mix on a demo that I had from a band from the South that I thought the demo was good, but in order to present it correctly to Columbia, I wanted him to do a mix on it. So he's there. I'm just talking to him. He's working on the Wu-Tang Clan album Iron Flag, and he's mixing that record. And all of a sudden, my cell phone rings, and I go over. I go, I'll be right there, Steve. And I turn around, and I go back by the board. And I go, hello. And he goes, Matt. I go, yeah. He goes, David Bowie. I'm like, Bowie calls my cell. And I go, hey, David, how you doing? What's going on? He goes, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing? And I go, oh, well, I've got the label meeting, Columbia label meeting every single week at noon. We do a thing where we meet with all the promo people. And I'm thinking to myself, can I just tell David Bowie that I can't meet with him if he wants me to see me tomorrow? Like, what is wrong with you, you idiot? That's what I thought of myself. I said, and then I grabbed a hold of my thoughts. I went, oh, David, but and before I could even say, hey, but if you need me, I'll change my schedule. He goes, well, what about Thursday or Friday? And I said, okay, yeah, I'm free, David. And he goes, all right, cool. He goes, I'm going to give you the address. I'm going to send a car for you. This is what's going on. So I go to David's place, which is unbelievable. And it's in, central Lower Manhattan. And I go up there, and I remember getting dropped off and got this spiral staircase in this, in this beautiful place. And, the outside garden, you got like basically the balcony type garden thing in New York City there. And David was there with Coco, who was his assistant from 1973. A lot of people, she basically is, she was a really nice woman, great to me. And, a lot of times Angie Bowie said that was kind of the end of her marriage because Coco, become Bowie's like, side person working. But, I don't, all I know is, just read all that stuff. But I've had nothing but great experiences with her. And I have nothing but respect for Angie, obviously. But David's like, hey, listen, I want to play you the entire record again. And I'd love to get your ideas for remixers or something we could do to like do something interesting for these tracks. So we sit and we are on couches across from each other, like the couch I'm sitting on now. But he's like 3 or 4 feet in front of me. And we're just sitting there looking at each other and just kind of talking every few minutes about a track. And I'll go, oh, you know, it might be great to remix this. You know what I mean? You know, and then I don't know who we talk about, whatever it was, Aphex Twin or Fatboy Slim or whatever. It could have been anybody, but we were, you know, I was kind of going in that direction. And he plays the album for me. And this is me hearing the original version of the album the second time of Eden. And then Coco, bless her heart, and how cool she was to do this, goes, hey, David, I think you need to play those other 5 songs for Matt. And I go, what? She goes, Dave goes, oh, I don't know. You know, I don't really sure. I go, oh, David, you got to play it for me. So David goes, oh, okay, let's do it. And so he plays the first one for me, and I'm listening to it. And it's the cover of Neil Young's I've Been Waiting for You, which ended up on the album, even, of course, it wasn't going to be on there. And he goes, well, what do you think of this? And I go, David, I think you got to put it on the album. It's a great, he goes, yeah, it's the Neil Young cover, you know. And I go, you got to put it on the album. It's great. And then he goes, all right, well, let's check out the next one. And the next one was Slow Burn, which he was not going to put on the album, which he got the, you know, the Grammy nod for. And, you know, he was having second thoughts about it. So at this point, Bowie liked to chain smoke, you know, at this point, right? And so like he was smoking and kind of walking around the room and then like stepping out like on the patio area and coming back. And at the end of Slow Burn, he goes to me, okay, Matt, what do you think? And I go, David, you got to put it on the album. This song is phenomenal. It's like, you can just imagine this. He's starting to like, I'm starting to make him second guess. And then he plays me a third song. Everybody Says Hi. And he goes to me at the end of it. He's starting to like get a little bit more. I see a little anxiety. He asked me about the third song and he goes, Matt, what do you think? I'm like, David, I really think you got to put this on the album. And so here we go. And so you got to guess that at this point, I'm not thinking through that deeply, but he's probably thinking, was this guy doing everything I do, or is he right? Like, should this be on the album? We get to the 4th song. He's right now, he's chain smoking. He's stepping in and out of the patio thing. And he walks back in and he goes, all right, what do you think of this one? I go, B-side, soundtrack, be good. And he goes like this. He goes, and he takes 2 fingers and he runs them across his forehead, like, you know, like relief. And then he did it the second time too, like, well, he didn't do that again, but he was relieved that I said that the 4th song he shouldn't necessarily put on the album. And the 5th, I felt the same way about it. The 5th song I thought was, you know, okay, but you know, it wasn't as worthy of the album as other tracks. And one of the songs that I always thought was interesting, but I didn't think was worthy on the original lineup was the song that he wrote about Uncle Floyd Vivino, the guy that was a TV host. It was more like, and it felt a little bit novelty to me, but not real. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, I just didn't think, you know, because I knew my reference with Floyd Vivino was seeing like Dramarama or the Ramones on his TV show in the years before. And I did, you know, on Floyd's show, and which was a cool, like independent, like, you know, thing. But I didn't think the song was as good as anything else on the record. Well, sure enough, he took that song off the record, took off the reprise on the end of the album, and put on those 3 songs. He added all 3 of those songs to the record. And he said to me, he goes, Matt, he goes, listen, you know, we're doing this on a DL. Because I mean, he at this point, right, was labelless because he wanted to get out of his label. But he was, when he said that, you know what I mean, like on a deal, he just meant like, you know, just, you know, about, he wanted me to be like, you know, at that period of time. Eventually he didn't care at all. I just thought it was great. But he was, sure enough, he literally, and as I'm walking out of his house that night, he goes, I know you're friends with Scott Weiland. He goes, I know that Scott's been struggling. He goes, I've been through this myself. If he really needs to ever talk to somebody or call, you can connect us, and which was pretty amazing. And it never, and unfortunately happened. And I didn't get a chance to talk to Scott about it till years later. And really talk to him where I was in a place where I could talk to him about it. I did things with him, and it was, and shortly after that, we lost Scott like 8 months later, 9 months. I don't know what it was, but it was, but that Bowie experience was unbelievable because, you know, I A&R'd the record indirectly, which is what I did. And Bowie never puts an A&R guy's name on there, but it was a really incredible thing for me to do. And I know David was really happy enough that he did the deal with Columbia Records and put out the album on Columbia. So where I worked. But it was probably one of the most surreal experiences of my lifetime. And realizing that this guy that I loved, who, took me to a whole nother place with Diamond Donuts and Ziggy Stardust and Hunky Dory and all these records, that I had something to do with, some decisions that he made. And, I want to say this is the incredible thing. During that conversation, even before I asked him to play those songs and Coco suggested playing those songs, he looked at me while we were looking at each other across the couch and said, Matt, I just want you to know how much I appreciate all your knowledge and passion for the music that I've done. I said, well, David, I feel like I wouldn't be sitting here with you if it wasn't for you and your music, because when I discovered your music, I realized there was a whole nother world out there of music, and it made me reach further. And that's the absolute truth. And, that was this beautiful moment that me and him exchanged right there. That was really mind blowing to me. It stays with me, all the time, and it was crazy when he passed. I had known through the grapevine of just certain people that he'd been sick for a while. And I never said a word to anybody. And, he was just really communicating with most people with email at that period of time. But, it was a sad day when David died. And, I ended up being the one that got called and did like every single news, because people knew I had a relationship with them. So I was on CNN International, MSNBC, Al Jazeera America, you name it. I was talking on all the news channels about Bowie's history. But, and so when I put out the book that I wrote, all these things that I've done, which was named after the Killer song that, obviously Brandon Flowers wrote the night he met me, and went home and wrote that. Bowie's, of course, the whole Bowie chapter where I tell this story and I talk about, the Bowie relationship. It had to be vetted, of course. Simon and Schuster and Scribner are two big publishers, and they were not going to let anything get put in that book that anybody might sue them over or disagree. And Bowie's estate, Isolar, and everybody in his family said, yeah, everything Matt said is absolutely true. So that was great. And that was beautiful. But I'm so grateful to have had that relationship with a hero of mine like that. And it's one of those things that, I think, like anything in your life, when these things are happening, it's just like, you're kind of like, you're just there. You're witness to, you're a part of it. And then all of a sudden, when you look back and have time to think about it, as I've gotten older and sober and everything else, but I just look and go, wow, that is a really incredible thing. And that just having that, it's just a crazy thing, when you get to meet your heroes, because sometimes people have said, don't meet your heroes. But in most cases, whether it's Paul McCartney, who was so good to me, I did album specials with him. And, look, all the Stones were super cool to me. I did an interview with all the Stones after Bill Wyman had left, but they'd hired me to do the launch of their album, A Bigger Bang. And, I've worked with all these different artists, but Pete Townsend, when he walked in and goes, Pinfield, I've heard all about you. But then I was like, and he was just trying to bust my balls in a nice way. And then he sits down next to me and starts talking to me about bands that were new at the time. He's like, have you heard the Kaiser Chiefs? And I'm like, it's Pete Townsend in my ear. Like he's leaning over talking to me before we go live. And it was just, I'm hearing Pete Townsend make Little Quadrophenia, one of my favorite albums of all time, and many others, that I love. So I'm very, very blessed and I consider myself very fortunate that I've had, life experiences, man. You know what? Look, I don't have a lot of money, but I don't care about that. I care about life experiences. And music is the most important thing in the world to me. Music and people, for me, it's music and the people that I love. That's my girlfriend, my daughters, my mom who's 91, my brother and sister, my friends who are, that's, I'm rich in experiences, and that's the most important thing, so I'm just grateful to keep on going, and and still be working, which, I never want to retire ever, because I love to be around music, and I really, to me, it's it's one of those things that I think, as I get older and I look back, I just consider myself very, very, very lucky man and very blessed, and that I've been able to be around my passion all these years, and I don't take it for granted, man, because sometimes, and I've been through some ups and downs, like everybody, like everybody goes through those experiences, everything from heartbreak to like the addiction, alcoholism issues to, just, everybody goes through heartbreak and loss. They go through beautiful moments like when you have your kids and do, other things and meet someone you fall in love with. And, there's when you discover a song that you just absolutely says everything, speaks for you or to you. There's like nothing more beautiful than that, That's how I feel.
Holy hell.
It.
I have taken copious amounts of notes. You had said something where you don't meet your heroes. You said a few things that I'm just like, we're doing this right now. Like the same sensibility, just on a grander scale. We love music. It's the main vice. I mean, I have so many like other notes, sobriety, all that other shit. Oh man, we're gonna have to have you back.
I'll come back. I'll come back for sure. I will.
Or next time we're in LA, let's grab coffee or something. Or if you're ever in Florida, I mean, Matt, you want to go another 2 more hours?
You know what? I do got to get rolling. Unfortunately,
no.
But I want to thank you. But we can do it next time. I know you're kidding with me. I know. I'm just
dude. Thank you so much for letting us, in the name of the show, bother you, because it's been a long time coming, and this is no bullshit. Hero, we are children of the 90s. We are punk rock kids just grown up, and our altruistic goal is just to hang out with people, like you said, people in music. There you go. You're one of those people, and we can't thank you enough, man.
No, it was my pleasure. I gotta tell you guys, I really enjoyed it. Ryan, Abby, it was nice to be here.
We didn't even ask you the plethora of stupid questions we had.
Well, my girlfriend will make you guys laugh, because she said to me, when we first started seeing each other, she's like, "You're still trying to cover dead air when you're falling asleep." Isn't that right, Kara? She says you jokes around me. She goes, "You're like fading out. You're like, it's almost like I'm announcing the song." The fear of dead air, right, babe? She's right. It's so funny.
Matt, I have to ask one question, because he's a friend of ours. How do you know Pat Villa?
Oh, Pat's the best. I love Pat. I've done a lot of work with January Chain. I've worked with those guys for a long time. I've done a lot of stuff with them. I mean, I love Pat, and I think Pat and Mitch are just two of my dear friends, and I think Pat's a great talent.
Love him.
He's an incredible talent, and those guys are phenomenal.
They're great. They were one of our first guests, like number 3 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah, I love those guys.
They were a great example of like what we were they just played along with our dumb game.
And they're funny. Those guys are so charming. They're hilarious, aren't they?
Oh,
I mean, I love those. Yeah, Pat and Mitch are guys that I love those dudes, and I still work with them. I still do a lot of stuff with them because they're my guys, and I miss them. They're like the two guys in New York City that I really miss, because we would always go out and sing karaoke like 3 weeks close in a karaoke place down at 3 a.m. You know what I mean? Oh my God, we had a lot of fun. But I still, I went to Pat's wedding, which was
I know. That's why we're friends with him. We're seeing you on his feed and all this shit.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Small
Pat's
world.
Great. Yeah, I love those guys. They just opened for UB40, which is great over here.
Oh no shit.
Jones Beach. So I'm glad they
nice.
did a show and they're doing their thing. And I love those guys. Like I said, I think they're a great band, and they've got so much stuff they haven't even released that is amazing too, because of and people like literally when they dig back and find out some of these songs these guys have, they're just incredible. But they keep on running great stuff, and I love them. So,
well, we love you, and we thank you for your stories and your time. And we know you got to go tell Kara we said hey, and thank you for letting us borrow and bother you.
No, it was my pleasure, guys. It was really
fun.
good. I enjoyed hanging out with you both. All right. So you guys take care and thanks for taking the time today.